Welcome to Power, Policy, and Progress, the podcast where politics, policy, and the story shaping our future take center stage. I'm Madison Maynard, and happy primary day to voters in Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma. If you haven't already, make sure your voice is heard and head to the polls. Every vote matters, and every single election helps shape the future of your community, state, and country. So get out and vote. So today we begin overseas, where the United States and Iran have reached a preliminary ceasefire agreement after months of conflict. The deal would reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global oil shipping route, but major questions about Iran's nuclear program and regional security remain unsolved. Back in the United States, new polling suggests President Donald Trump may be losing support among white working class voters, a key part of his political base. As concerns about inflation and the cost of living persist, both parties are watching closely ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. And plus, the Justice Department has cleared way for a proposed $111 billion merger between Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery, a deal that could reshape the future of media and entertainment. And finally, President Trump celebrated his 80th birthday by hosting a UFC event on the White House lawn, sparking debate over politics, culture, and the role of spectacle in modern campaigning. All that and more coming up on Power, Policy, and Progress. Let's get right into it. After nearly 4 months of war, the United States and Iran have reached a preliminary framework agreement that could mark the first step towards ending one of the most dangerous conflicts in the Middle East in recent years. The agreement establishes a 60-day ceasefire between Washington and Tehran and includes plans to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping route through which roughly one-fifth of the world's oil supply typically passes. The waterway has been largely shut down since the war began in February, causing major disruptions to global energy markets and driving up fuel prices worldwide. Under the framework, the United States will begin dismantling its naval blockage of Iran, while Iran has agreed to remove mines and reopen the strait to commercial shipping. The move immediately calmed energy markets, with oil prices decreasing following this announcement. However, many of the most contentious issues remain unsolved. The agreement does not yet settle the future of Iran's nuclear program, which was one of the primary causes of this conflict, according to the administration, right? Questions surrounding uranium enrichment, international inspections, sanction relief, and Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium has been postponed to future negotiations during the ceasefire period. The deal also leaves uncertainty about fighting in neighboring Lebanon. Iranian officials say the agreement includes a halt to military operations involving Hezbollah, but Israel, which was not directly involved in the negotiations, has signaled its intent to continue military operations against the Iran-backed group. The framework has also created political tensions in Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has criticized aspects of the agreement, arguing it fails to address Iran's ballistic missile program and support for regional proxy groups. Some Israeli officials have called the deal a strategic victory for Tehran. For now, the agreement offers a temporary pause in a conflict that threatens to destabilize the entire region and disrupt the global economy. But with major disagreements still unsolved, the next 60 days of negotiations may determine whether this framework becomes a lasting peace or simply a brief break in the fighting. And my analysis is that this is going to be a temporary pause. I think within the 60 days of the ceasefire, I think that Israel is somehow going to rope the United States back into a conflict because Israel has made it clear that they do not want to end their military operations in the Middle East. So within the 60 days, I would be surprised if Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu did not rope the United States back into this conflict. However, this is a horrible political move for Donald Trump and the Republican Party if that ends up happening and if this doesn't end up being a permanent ceasefire after the 60 days. Politically, Israel is not very popular in the United States right now, especially after October 7th, 2023, after Hamas did attack Israel, but Israel retaliated with genocide of the Palestinians. So after that, the popularity of the state of Israel has gone down significantly on both sides, Republicans and Democrats. And Republicans specifically, who voted for Trump to reduce the United States' involvement in military operations across the globe, they are probably incredibly disappointed that President Trump entered into this war with Iran in the first place in partnership with Israel. So during a midterm year, 2026, it is not strategic to continue this operation and continue this war in Iran. And in the next segment, I talk about how white working class voters are distancing themselves from President Trump because of economic instability, largely because of this war. Gas prices are skyrocketing. Food, grocery prices were skyrocketing. Basic utilities skyrocketing. But now with the ceasefire, all of that is starting to go down, and reports are showing that gas prices are starting to go down. But reports also show that we are not going to be back to where we were before the war started when it comes to gas prices, utility costs, grocery costs. We are not going to be back to where we were before the war until probably a year from now, after the midterms. So people are still going to be feeling the brunt of the economic turmoil, even if we remain in a ceasefire. So for the Republican Party, it is not looking good for them this midterm cycle. I am predicting a blue wave, and largely because independent voters who voted for Trump thinking that they were voting for economic stability, those voters don't trust the Trump administration anymore and are looking at other options. But new polling suggests that President Trump is facing a political problem from an unexpected group of people, white working class voters. So, as the 2026 midterm elections are approaching, this problem is going to affect President Trump and his influence over the Republican Party, and if the Republicans are going to take victory in the midterm elections. For nearly a decade, blue collar white Americans have formed the backbone of Trump's political coalition, helping propel him to victories in both 2016 and 2024. But recent surveys show growing dissatisfaction with the president's handling of the economy, an issue that has traditionally been one of his biggest strengths. According to multiple national polls, majority of white voters without college degrees now disapprove of Donald Trump's economic performance. In 2018, many of these voters approved of his handling of the economy by margins of 30% points or more. Today, those numbers have flipped, with some polls showing disapproval ratings exceeding approval ratings by double digits. The primary concern appears to be the cost of living. Despite campaign promises to lower prices, many Americans continue to face high costs for utilities, groceries, gasoline. And some voters who supported Trump in 2024 say they feel financially squeezed and frustrated that economic relief has not materialized. Republican strategists warn that if these voters stay home in November rather than turn out for Republican candidates, it could threaten the party's ability to maintain control of Congress. Democrats, meanwhile, see an opportunity to compete in traditionally Republican areas by appealing to voters who are increasingly concerned about inflation and economic uncertainty. The challenge for Republicans is that while many working class voters are disappointed with President Trump's economic record, they have not necessarily embraced Democrats. Instead, some are considering third party candidates, and some are simply just disengaging from the political process altogether. With the economic turmoil expected to remain a defining issue of the 2026 midterms, both parties are closely watching whether Trump's once reliable working class base returns to the GOP fold or becomes the deciding factor in one of the most consequential election cycles in recent history. This is not surprising. And so many people voted for President Trump in 2024 because people did not feel economically secure under the Biden administration. The numbers showed that Biden did well in the economy. However, people did not feel economically secure. They did not feel financially secure at all. And that is why so many people voted for President Trump in 2024. I think a part of the reason why he won the popular vote. However, President Trump has broken the promises that he has said during the campaign trail in 2024. He broke all those promises the day he entered into the war with Iran. That very day, he broke all those promises because knowing, at least he should have known, that entering into this conflict would close the Strait of Hormuz, which would drastically increase the cost of gas. And entering into this war in general was very unpopular with his base, who also largely voted for him because he promised not to enter the United States into any additional wars. So he has broken a lot of promises for his coalition. He just did. And that is why a lot of Trump supporters feel betrayed by the president, especially when he decided to enter into this war with Iran, with Israel. And there are some people who are surprised that Israel's popularity is not very high in the United States because billions and billions of dollars are being sent to Israel to commit genocide or to this war that we are spending billions of dollars on. And what are we getting in return? Higher gas, higher cost of living, higher cost of utilities. That is the benefit that we're getting. Okay, Donald Trump and some of his cabinet members have said this is essential because Iran has a nuclear weapon. Okay, so does Israel, so does a lot of other countries. But with the ceasefire that I was just talking about earlier, we might walk away from this conflict and Iran still might have a nuclear weapon. So all of this would have been for absolutely nothing. And that makes people question, was this war actually about Iran having a nuclear weapon? Did Trump just feel really good about himself after kidnapping the president of Venezuela and thought he could do the same thing in Iran? I'm just saying. So it is not surprising that white working class Americans are dissatisfied with the Trump administration. He promised them economic safety and he's done the opposite. And this is going to affect how many MAGA supporters vote in the 2026 midterms and in 2028. It just is. And something I'm going to talk about in a future episode. We're going to dive into 2028 in a future episode. So stay tuned for that. But my theory is that Tucker Carlson, he is a staunch anti-war Republican who once was Trump's biggest ally, now one of Trump's biggest enemies. I think that Tucker Carlson's going to run for president, everyone. I really do. And those former MAGA supporters who vote for Trump in 2024 that are not happy with President Trump entering into this war, I think that they would vote for a Tucker Carlson. I know Republican strategists are worried about, Republican leaning voters who are not happy with the administration voting for a third party candidate or staying at home. I think that that could definitely be true in 2028. Excuse me. I think that's definitely going to be true in 2026. My apologies. I think that's definitely going to be true in 2026, but I don't think that's going to be 2028 because I do think there's going to be candidates that will come up in 2028 on the Republican side that are going to be anti-war, that are going to try to grab those voters who are dissatisfied with the president. My theory is Tucker Carlson, but that's kind of a teaser for a future episode, so stay tuned for that. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes and how this is going to impact the Republicans politically. We're seeing it unfold with our own eyes right now. It's not a surprise, but when you vote for someone who has a history of lying, and clearly he lied on the campaign trail to get those votes, completely turned around and did the complete opposite. I'm just saying. President Trump is a known liar. So for all of the voters who are surprised by this, shouldn't be, because President Trump has said one thing and done another multiple times. And this is one of the biggest examples of that. So we'll follow this closely. So let's move on to something that I discussed last week on Thursday. This is going to be an update on the CBS News saga, the 60-minute saga, the Paramount Skydance media saga, and the attempt of a MAGA takeover, everyone. There is an attempt. So let me get right into it. A major shakeup in the media industry could soon transform the future of news, entertainment, and streaming. The Justice Department announced Friday that it will not challenge the proposed merger between Paramount Global and Warner Bros. Discovery, clearing one of the biggest obstacles for a deal valued at approximately $111 billion. If completed, the merger would bring together two of Hollywood's most iconic movie studios, along with the streaming platforms Paramount Plus and HBO Max. It would also place two of the nation's most influential news organizations, CBS News and CNN, under the same corporate umbrella. The combined company would be led by media executive David Ellison, who acquired Paramount last year in an $8 billion deal. Supporters argue the merger is necessary for survival in an increasingly competitive media landscape dominated by tech giants and streaming competitors. Paramount says the deal would create a stronger company, better equipped to compete for audiences, technology, and investment. However, critics have raised concerns that combining two media giants could reduce competition through the entertainment industry. Labor advocates and antitrust experts also warn the merger could mean fewer buyers for television and film projects, potentially lowering wages and opportunities for writers, actors, and production crews. The Justice Department said its months-long investigation included extensive interviews and depositions before concluding that the merger was unlikely to harm competition or consumers. But the deal is not finalized just yet. California Attorney General Rob Bonta's office is continuing its own investigation, and regulators in the United Kingdom have also launched a review. Some state attorney generals are still considering whether to challenge the merger independently. The deal has also drawn political scrutiny because of the Ellison's family's relationship to President Trump. Critics have questioned whether those ties influenced the review process, though the Justice Department has not indicated any wrongdoing. Of course they didn't. Of course they didn't. For now, the federal government's decision moves the merger one step closer to reality and potentially ushers in one of the largest media consolidations in modern American history. So, we are witnessing the MAGA takeover of mainstream media. It is underway, everyone. It is underway. The purpose of this is for more MAGA influence in our media, in our entertainment, and in streaming platforms. That is why this is happening right now. And this is why the Justice Department said that there was no evidence that this is going to impact competition. Of course, this is going to impact competition. Like, of course, this is going to impact competition. But the scariest part of this is the political implications. That is the scariest part of this. The political implications are incredibly concerning, but in my opinion, it will not be very effective. And let me explain why. The goal is to have this MAGA takeover, combine Warner Bros. And Paramount into one large media corporation to take over CNN and CBS News, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, all of that, right? Specifically focusing on CBS News and CNN and the Ellison family's desire to turn those news stations into pro-Israel propaganda, pro-Trump propaganda, etc., going to work as effectively as they think it is going to. Why? Way less people are watching CBS News and CNN in general, but especially after the takeover of CBS News with Barry Weiss as editor in chief, and we talked about this last episode, the ratings are sinking at CBS News. Sinking. The ratings of CBS Evening News are tanking. Tanking. On average, the evening news programs at ABC and NBC get like 8 million views. CBS now gets like 4 million or below. That is a drastic difference. CBS has always been third of the three big news networks. However, that gap has gotten wider since Barry Weiss became the editor in chief of CBS News. The audience that used to watch CBS News, they're turning their channel. They are turning their channel. So those people are not going to get influenced by CBS News if they weren't MAGA previously, because with the change, they're turning off that channel. They are turning to another channel. They're turning on MS Now or ABC or NBC, right? They are not going to start to watch CBS News and then they're going to be like basically brainwashed into now being MAGA. That just isn't going to happen. Those people are turning the station. With CNN, if this ends up happening and Barry Weiss becomes the editor-in-chief of CNN, if this merger actually happens, I am going to say the same thing. People who are diehard CNN viewers, who watch every single evening, who watch every single morning, they're just going to turn off CNN. They're just going to turn it off. They're not going to then start to watch CNN and now they are being brainwashed to be MAGA. It just isn't going to happen. And more MAGA people are not going to start to watch CBS News and CNN because they already have their view of CBS News and CNN, even if the MAGA takeover actually happens for those stations. They already have the opinion that CBS News is fake news. They already have the opinion that CNN is fake news. So why would they then start to watch it, even when the shift of the culture, the shift of the editorial decision making, even when those start to happen, and it is evident, and it's already evident with CBS News. When those decisions become more clear and it starts to become more clear that it's leaning towards MAGA, those MAGA people still have in their mind that CNN is fake news, CBS News is fake news, no matter what. They're still going to go watch Fox News. They're still going to go on Rumble. They're still going to watch MAGA influencers online. And if the Ellison family or anyone else wants to have a MAGA takeover, going to previous more central or centrist news outlets is not the way to go. Is not the way to go. They should be partnering with independent media organizations to influence more younger people. I mean, we saw in 2024 that MAGA influencers really impacted white Gen Z male voters to go to the polls and vote for Trump. That is how you influence people to vote more Republican or to vote for the MAGA agenda. It's not by trying to get them to watch CNN and CBS News. Those young Gen Z, right-wing men, they're not going to start watching CBS News and CNN. They just aren't. So the moral of the story is I don't think this is going to work. If anything, I think this is going to cost them money. This is going to cost them ratings and cost them money. Because to sum it up, those who previously watched CBS News and CNN are not going to continue watching those stations, and previous people who maybe watched it and then stopped because now they're MAGA and maybe they were influenced in another way, like by Fox News or by independent outlets. Those people aren't going to go back to CNN or CBS just because now they're more MAGA, because now they're being brainwashed that CNN is fake news, CBS is fake news. That's what all of those propaganda stations say. And finally, those who have always been MAGA, those who have always been Trump supporters, who have always been Republicans, who have always listened to right-wing radio, who have always watched Fox News, and they are now watching or listening to right-wing podcasters. Those people especially are not going to then now watch CNN and CBS News. So this is going to be a flop. I'm excited to see it. If they want to actually make a difference and have this MAGA takeover and influence more people to vote Republican, especially during this midterm election year, partner with independent news organizations to do that, because young people are watching independent media. Young people are not watching CNN and CBS News. They are not watching CNN and CBS News at all. So we'll follow this story and see if the ratings actually continue to tank, which is my opinion. We'll see if the merger actually happens, because of course the deal hasn't been finalized yet, but it will. It will be. And I'm curious to also see what will happen with the prominent anchors in CNN if this merger happens. Will they walk away? Will they renew their contracts because it's a steady job? I don't know. There are some people over there that I would be surprised if they stayed at CNN if this merger happened, especially if that entailed Barry Weiss being the editor-in-chief of CNN. I would be very surprised if Caitlin Collins stayed. I would be very surprised if Anderson Cooper stayed. I'd be very surprised if Abby Phillips stayed. I would be very surprised if Laura Coates stayed. I would be surprised if all of them stayed. I would be very surprised, because Barry Weiss as editor-in-chief of CNN, it would be pretty offensive for such amazing journalists to be working under Barry Weiss. It just would be. But to wrap up this episode, we are going to talk about President Trump's 80th birthday. So President Trump, he celebrated his 80th birthday in a way that no president has ever done before. Ever. He celebrated his birthday by hosting a UFC fight night on the South Lawn of the White House. The event, called UFC Freedom 250, brought thousands of spectators to the White House grounds Sunday night. Trump sat ringside with the First Lady, Melania Trump, UFC President Dana White, cabinet officials, Republican lawmakers, and several prominent business leaders as fighters competed inside a massive octagon set up just steps away from the White House. The event featured military flyovers, fireworks, and 7 mixed martial arts bouts. Supporters called it a uniquely American celebration ahead of the nation's upcoming 250th anniversary, and praised Trump's willingness to connect with audiences outside of traditional political spaces. But the event has also sparked significant criticism. Many Democrats and cultural commentators questioned whether the White House should serve as a venue for a professional combat sports event. Critics argue the spectacle distracted from ongoing concerns about inflation, foreign policy, and the economy. A recent Reuters exposed poll found that only 16% of Americans believe hosting UFC fights at the White House was appropriate. The timing also fueled debate because just one day earlier, the National Symphony Orchestra performed what some fear could be one of its final concerts at the Kennedy Center before major changes and renovations backed by the Trump administration. For critics, the contrast between a classical music performance and a televised cage fight highlighted what they see as a broader shift in America's cultural priorities. Politically, the event may have been aimed at a key voting bloc, that's for sure. Young men. UFC remains one of the most popular sports among younger male audiences, and Republicans hope events like this can help strengthen support ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Recent polling, however, suggests Trump's approval among young men has slipped compared to where he stood after the 2024 election. Whether viewed as patriotic entertainment or political theater, the White House UFC event represented another example of Trump's ability to blend politics, pop culture, and spectacle in a way a few modern presidents have attempted. So, my opinion is yes, Trump has an ability to blend pop culture and politics and make this whole spectacle. However, the problem is this is a waste of taxpayer dollars. This is a waste of taxpayer dollars. We are now in a ceasefire, but we were just in a war with Iran where inflation is up, cost of gas is up, etc. I already gave the whole spiel earlier, right? This is where our taxpayer dollars are going to a UFC fight on the White House South Lawn. This is where our taxpayer dollars are going to. When we could use that money for affordable health care, to better our school systems, and so many other priorities that should be of the mind of the President of the United States instead of a UFC cage fight. So this is just a waste of time and energy and a waste of taxpayer dollars. And the fact that you had to pay to watch this fight or these fights on Paramount Plus. If this was on the White House lawn and our taxpayer dollars are being spent on that, this should have been free to watch on all platforms. This should have been completely free. People have to pay to watch it on Paramount Plus when our taxpayer dollars went to this cage being built on the White House lawn. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, are we serious? So that's crazy. I'm sure a lot of people did pay to watch it, but still, it should have been free on platforms. Absolutely free. And I was also disappointed at Serena Williams' husband being in attendance, Alexis Ohana, or whatever his name is. I was very disappointed to see that he was there. I don't know why anyone would be at this event if you aren't a supporter of the president, unless you were a journalist. I don't know why anyone who's not a supporter of the president would be at the event. It was a celebration of his 80th birthday. It was a celebration of his 80th birthday. Why would anyone be there that didn't support the president? This was not just a normal UFC fight that maybe he was in attendance for. This was on the White House lawn. So why are you there, Serena Williams' husband? Why are you there if you don't support the president? But maybe he does. And that's my point. Maybe he's willing to sell his soul to be in the rooms with billionaires and now trillionaires, Elon Musk and all of those people. Maybe he wants to be in those spaces. Maybe Serena Williams' husband wants to be in those spaces and he's willing to sacrifice his morals and values to be in those spaces and to be amongst the rich and wealthy. Mark Zuckerberg was there. I mean, there was a bunch of people there. And maybe he just wanted to be in that space. I would hope, as a father to Black children, as a husband to a Black woman, I would have hoped that he would have a little bit more common sense than to be in a space celebrating President Trump's 80th birthday. I would hope that he knew better than that, but clearly he doesn't. And I'm very curious to see if he makes a statement about Josh Hokick's offensive, racist Michelle Obama comment, calling her a man. And that's what I'm getting to next. Josh Hokick, I guess he won. I guess he's a UFC fighter. Never heard of him. I don't watch UFC at all, so I'm very unfamiliar with this world. But he won and ended the fight in an interview saying, and Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America? And you hear cheering in the background. How are we first of all, why are the Obamas rent free in MAGA's minds all the time? Michelle Obama hasn't been the first lady since 2017. Why are the Obamas always rent free in the minds of MAGA? Why? They are living their best lives. They are living their best lives, private lives now. After years of serving this nation, they have not been in public office since 2017. Why are you guys even still talking about Michelle Obama? Why was that even in your head after you won the UFC fight? And Michelle Obama's a man. Like, that's what you're thinking about after you won the match or the fight or whatever? That's what you're thinking about? Are we okay? And the racist implications of Black women always being compared to men or being called masculine. It is a racist trope. It is a racist trope. And Serena Williams also experienced that racist trope. She was called a man for years when she was at the height of her tennis career. So the fact that her husband was there when a UFC fighter then calls Michelle Obama a man is disgusting. It's disgusting. It is a racist, offensive trope to call Black women masculine, to call them men, etc. It is horrific. It is offensive. And this makes sense for it to happen at Trump's 80th birthday. Because Trump himself is a racist. He surrounds himself with racists and white supremacists. So it's not surprising that this happened at his 80th birthday. If anything, it would have been surprising if nothing like this happened at this event. I'm just saying. It's honestly pathetic. For all of those who are in attendance, it's a shame on you. It's pathetic. So it's ridiculous. And our taxpayer dollars were spent on this BS. Like, what? So that is all I have to say about that. And before I wrap this episode up, I have a message for Gen Z and Gen Z voters. And this just came to me. This just really sparked in my head, just talking about the economic turmoil and the war that we have gotten into with Iran, and more lives are being lost in the Middle East. I really hope that in elections moving forward for Democratic-leaning Gen Z voters specifically, that you choose not to waste your vote on a third-party candidate anymore. Joe Stein and whoever the candidate for the Party for Socialism and Liberation, who a lot of Gen Z voters gave away her vote or their vote to her, they were never going to win office. They were never going to win the election. Ever. They were never going to win. So why are you wasting your vote on third-party candidates that are never going to win, basically as a protest, and not vote for Kamala Harris, who, yes, could she have been harsher against Israel? Of course. But she would have not gotten us into this war. And I believe she would have worked to ensure that there was going to be a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. I believe that with my whole heart, that Kamala Harris was going to work towards that goal and work towards peace in the Middle East. A vote for third party was a vote for Trump. And are you guys happy now? Are you guys happy now that you wasted your vote on Joe Stein? Where has she been since 2024? She's been missing in the dark in her basement. You wasted your vote on Joe Stein, and now we are exiting, probably temporarily, from a 4-month war with Iran that has brought us nothing but heartache, has brought nothing but economic turmoil, and lives have been lost in the Middle East. More lives have been lost in the Middle East. In Iran, Lebanon, more lives are lost in Gaza, on the Gaza Strip in the West Bank, because you wasted your vote on Joe Stein, you wasted your vote on the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and now we have Trump, who he said he was going to be a president of peace. Lie. And even you fell for it. The Democrat-leaning Gen Z voters who voted for a third party also fell for the fact that Kamala was going to be a warmongering president. You fell for it because she was going to bring more peace than Trump. We would have never been in this war with Iran if it wasn't for Donald Trump being elected in 2024. So what I have to say to the Gen Z voters who are listening who voted for a party, and this just came to me to say this at the end of this episode, please, please, please do not waste your vote moving forward. Vote for the Democrat Party in 2026, and we will come together to pick our candidate in 2028. But please don't waste your vote in 2026 or 2028, please. And we're going to continue to talk about the importance of voting in future episodes, but every episode I'm going to stress to you the importance of voting, because one vote towards Joe Stein was a waste of vote, and that vote could have went to Kamala Harris, and she could have been the one who was elected president of the United States instead of Donald Trump. That's just a final message I have for all who are listening today. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Power, Policy, and Progress with Madison Maynard. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion, and be sure to tune in on Thursday. We will be back with more political news, analysis, and conversations about the issues shaping our country. In the meantime, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Power, Policy, and Progress Podcast for online content. I also have a TikTok at Power, Policy, and Podcast Pod. Please follow me on TikTok. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please follow, subscribe, and rate the podcast. Please rate it high, like 5 stars. That would be preferred. Please do show your support. And of course, join the conversation. Leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, please leave a comment. I love to hear from you. And thank you again for listening. I'm Madison Maynard, and you're listening to Power, Policy, and Progress with Madison Maynard. I'll see you next time.